Hello and welcome to another episode of Pull Up 3. I'm Paragon Don. I don't know why I said that like that. Ew.
I'm
Nasty.
Jamie.
And I'm Jay Trent.
It's been a while. And today we are here with Jamie Steyer Johnson. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk some links, refresh my memory on the WNBA season, kind of in the thick of college season, but I'm always happy to get back and talk a little bit of W.
So before we get into W, we would like to discuss you. So would you like to talk about like what you do, how you got into it, things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, I'm Jamie Steyer Johnson. I do all sorts of sports, women's basketball, primarily broadcasting. So my kind of main thing is I'm the women's basketball radio analyst for Iowa State women's basketball, and then I also do some TV stuff as an analyst for Drake University in Des Moines, volleyball, men's and women's soccer, and then this year, I started working on a podcast for HerHoopStats called The Press Break. And so that's been kind of my venture into covering WNBA a little bit more professionally. It's been something I've obviously followed a lot for several years, but actually got to talk about it a little bit this year. We started recording near the tail end of the season. So I kind of got right out there as we wrapped up. But that, and then alongside that, as far as podcasting goes, I also work with the 10-12 network, which covers the Big 12 as a whole, and obviously a lot of women's basketball there. So been doing all that. And then my mom has been a basketball coach for pretty much my entire life. It's like the only job she's ever had. So she's been coaching at Iowa State for about 23 years now. So I grew up like heavily involved in women's basketball and just kind of kept doing it as I got older and got to have like my own life and own career.
That's really good. That's really cool. So with your, you said your mom currently or has been coaching for long. I'm assuming like she was the first person that really got you into it, obviously. Whatever your like some of your, I guess, fondest memories of her regarding like basketball and being around her and some of her like programs that she's coached.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. Like my mom and I are extremely similar people, which meant that in high school we butted heads a lot. But then as I got into like college, moved out of the house, we became like best friends. We talk hoops constantly. Now that I work with Iowa State, when I first started calling games for them, I travel with the team as well. And first road trip, we pull up to the hotel and they give us our keys like in a packet together. And she's like, "Yeah, I guess." I wasn't really thinking, but I just told them we could room together. Like we could change that going forward if you want. And I'm like, you know what? Nah, let's do it. And so this is year 6 that my mom and I are roommates, and because we're just gonna hang out anyway. And so we sit there and we watch basketball. And then when we need a break, she puts on a Hallmark movie because that's who she is. And we have like tablets, laptops, the hotel TV. Like when we get in the thick of things, I've got my command center with games and stuff. She's watching film, but growing up, like it was really cool because like I'm 6'1", and so a lot of women who are tall end up being kind of insecure about that. And I never was because I grew up around a college basketball program, and so that was the people I looked up to. Like they were these beautiful, tall women who I like wanted to be just like them. And fortunately, I was tall like them. And so I thought that that was really cool. And as I got older and realized that that's in a way uncommon, I was super grateful for that. And yeah, I mean, it was cool because you get to know these players as human beings. And so the fact that I was really into acting and kind of a nerd and really like to read, like I saw that they were into those things as well, but they were also elite athletes. And so I just grew up a lot more confident, I think, for having those role models. And it didn't hurt that when I was in elementary school and she went back to coaching. It was my 6th birthday. That was her first day back to work, which was at the time a little bit traumatizing for someone who grew up with their mom as a stay-at-home mom. But when like year 2, we were going out to the Virgin Islands for Thanksgiving and then ended up every other year going to like the Bahamas and to Hawaii. So I ended up being a very well-traveled child. That definitely helped soothe the sting a little bit. And then, I got to have dozens and dozens of older sisters when in our immediate family, it's me and then my younger brother's 2 years younger. So we got a really big family from Iowa State. They call it kind of the Cyclone family, which is like a cliche that I feel like a lot of programs like to throw around, but it's very genuine here. So it was cool to do that, and then to start actually doing things for myself and to have all these people that my mom knows as far as broadcasters, other coaches, stuff like that, be super, super supportive. Made a lot of really great connections, and then a lot of people that just kind of follow the content and reach out and sometimes find it organically. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've known your mom for so long. I didn't know you were doing this thing. And a lot of encouragement. And so that's been really helpful, obviously extremely rewarding to get that feedback from kind of the group that I grew up around.
Who do you think is your favorite or some of your favorite people that your mother has coached?
Oh my gosh, the list is long and varied. Growing up when I was very, very young, there was a woman called Mary Fox, and she was there when I was like a little kid, just as my mom was getting back to coaching, and she wore number 11. She was from Ohio. I was born in Toledo because my mom first was hired by Bill Fenley back when he was at Toledo. He hired her directly out of college, which is like kind of crazy to think about. She coached people older than her first year. But so I loved Mary. People called her Foxy, and she was like tall and blonde. And so I was like, oh my gosh, she could basically be part of my family. I dye my hair now, but I'm very, very blonde. And I adored her. And so all growing up, I always wore number 11. And now we stay in touch. She's still very, very good friends with my family and with all of the people at Iowa State. So I get to see her usually at least once a year. And so that's really cool just to have someone who like literally is like my older sister that I've stayed in touch with throughout my life. And then you just go on down the line. I mean, you've had such great players. You've had great people. The really cool thing is there's even players from like before my mom was coaching that I now know really well because people stay in touch with the program. People come back a lot. So like Stacy Freeze was a great player when I was really young. She's around a lot still. And then in more recent years, this will be really relevant in the next step of our conversation. But Bridget Carlton obviously played at Iowa State. That's like one of my favorite people my mom's ever coached, one of my mom's favorite people she's ever coached. One of like the greatest successes she's had in recruiting, like was tipped off from someone that she knows up in Canada who does a lot of scouting. And he's like, Jody, all these people always say like, oh, you only told Iowa State, oh, you only told Iowa State. He's like, I sent her film out to dozens of coaches, to dozens of teams. You're just the only one who watched it, who gave me the time of day and got it on her really early. So my mom works really hard, and so I love that. But I mean, beyond that, you've had like Allison Lacey was when I was in probably middle school or so, and she now goes by Allison Otzelberger because she is married to TJ Otzelberger, the head basketball coach at Iowa State on the men's side. And they met when he was a manager on the men's side. She played for the women's side. That's like my mom's best friend now. She came over from Australia, so just kind of got adopted into our family too. So it's a long, long list. But I will say that like these recent teams that Iowa State has had, like last year, this year, obviously I get to be around them a lot because I'm broadcasting, but they're also just tremendous human beings. I know them as well as any group I've ever known because they want to get to know everyone that's around as actual people, and really appreciate that. And particularly on that team, Emily Ryan, our 5th-year senior point guard this year. That's now I'm old enough that now they're not my older sisters. Now they're my little sisters, and so that's like the closest thing I have to a little sister. And so I'm just really excited to be able to be around the group we have now. especially her. But I mean, shoot, you go top to bottom on that roster, like never bored when you have Addie Brown, when you have Audie Crooks like running around. They're something. They're an entertaining group. So it's a long and great list of people that I've been able to be around there.
We are very big Audie Crooks and Emily Ryan fans here.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I knew. Yeah. See, that's I know you guys have good taste. So I knew that this would be a good conversation.
Well, thank you for talking to us about that. Now we can get into Minnesota. As we know, they you may have had different expectations than us. We have talked on this podcast many times. It's not that we did not think Minnesota was good. We just did not know they was that good. And then by the quarter of the season, it's like, maybe this is a really good team.
Hmm.
B decided she wanted to be in the conversation for second first best player in the league. I think now she's officially like, I think her and Stewie are like 2A, 2B, which is kind of weird, but I just think Asia's the clear number one at this juncture.
Asia
Uh,
elevated herself into like the sole
yeah.
one, and then Fee elevated herself into that next tier for sure.
Yeah. So, and then they just gelled so well. Like, they made a fantastic run to the finals, arguably a controversial call away from another chip. What were some of the things that you really liked about their play, and what are some of the things that maybe you didn't, if any?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I promise I don't bring everything that I talk about back to Iowa State, but the funny thing is that there are some similarities just in, I think, the way that they operate, in that you have a lot of players that have had success, that are talented, that maybe get talked about a little bit, but generally fly under the radar. Like for the Lynx, you bring in Alana Smith, who had a tremendous season last year. You have Courtney Williams, who has developed her game in such a big way, kind of bounced around between a couple teams over the past few years, but has really developed herself into a great point guard, as well as has been an elite scorer for a while. And then you do some kind of funky stuff, like you finally get Chechi Zandalasini back after years of her not coming over from overseas. You pick up Natisha Heidemann, who I was thrilled about. I loved the moves that the Lynx made in the offseason, especially with having some cap space to work with. I thought that the last time they made a significant number of offseason moves, it didn't quite pan out. There were just some pieces that didn't end up fitting the way I think they were hoping they would, and that happens. But to finally be able to not fully reset the roster, but really bring in some different pieces, I thought that they made awesome moves. And then you go and you are able to. This is the kind of similarity I see to Iowa State, where you really maximized what you had on the roster. You may not have had a bunch of all-stars. You may not have had people getting a bunch of supermax deals. You may not have had a flashy roster, and that was certainly reflected in a lot of the perceived shortcomings, and a lot of the way that they were talked about, some of the rankings in the off season and the preseason, things like that. But fortunately, that doesn't really have an impact on the way the season goes, and they very much knew what they had there. And obviously, Cheryl Reeve has a vision, and so it was really cool to watch the group come together. It's been really cool to have Bridget up in Minnesota. That is the closest team to us in Iowa, and so that was already my team. To a degree, I hadn't followed it absurdly closely throughout college and things like that, but then it was a really natural transition to become a huge fan, especially when she was up there. And I know it's tough to stick in that league, but it said a lot about Cheryl and about the Lynx organization that they specifically had seen the vision with Bridget and wanted to continue to keep her around, saw what she could do defensively, but knew how much the potential was offensively. And so when they brought in all these other pieces that also were maybe a little bit underrated, I was like, no, I know that you understand what you're doing. I know how great of a talent evaluator you are because I've seen it with someone I know personally. And so it was really exciting to see that. And to be as good of a defensive team as they were, was awesome. To be able to go out there and switch 1 through 5 a lot of the time, to really be able to put clamps on some teams that were difficult to clamp down on. And then to also be able to turn around and have success on offense just because of the fluidity, and because of the just the mentality they play with. They play a smart style of basketball. It's pretty adaptable. I think that's why there's not a lot of teams that you look at over the course of the season where you're like, well, they just weren't built for the Lynx to beat them. Like they were able to make some adjustments, and be competitive pretty consistently. Now, going forward, I do think that there's always going to be things that you can shore up a little bit. I think that part of it was not having a huge inside presence at times hurt, especially just as far as having a backup to Alana. Bringing in Maisha Hines Allen helped a lot. And then it was really exciting for me to see at the very end of the season, Dorka Yuha sort of getting back to her regular self. It was tough for her to be injured so much of the season. And because she came in a little bit banged up, I think that it was tough to understand just where her health was and what she was dealing with because that's just not something you publicize a ton. But the way that she was able to play in the finals, like you get thrown out there, you haven't played consistent minutes all year, and then all of a sudden, oh, we're in some foul trouble, oh, we're struggling a little bit. Here, go play minutes in the finals against New York, and the way she performed was really encouraging for the future, just because you know what her potential is, you know what she's done, and it became very obvious that yeah, she's been dealing with health stuff this year. It's not so much, oh, she took a step back, oh, she just doesn't have it. No, she hasn't been healthy. And beyond that, I feel like they're a really complete team. Most of their core players are still under contract for next year. The entire starting five, and then you've got a handful of the reserves, which obviously we'll get into a little bit as far as that goes with draft and stuff like that. But I just thought they played exciting basketball. I thought they played a fun pace, and I was surprised by how down on them people were coming into the season, but I did not predict what they did by any means. What they did was really, really impressive to come together the way they did because they were a team. And that's always, I think, really fun to watch.
I think one of the things or one of the things you mentioned was the defense. I think that was kind of the thing that really, well, I think when we knew that was, they really set themselves apart from the rest of the pack. Um, with B having of course, her depoy season, Bridget Carlton, Lana Smith, like they're also having depoy caliber type seasons. Like they had a tremendous front court defense. And like they also just played that well by committee. Like everything seemed really seamless.
Mhm.
They racked up a ton of steals, a ton of blocks as a group. Like they were just so disruptive and teams paid for it very dearly. Like I think when they beat Seattle back to back that time and like all of them was really like Seattle and the Lynx was getting active at
Mhm.
every time they played. And when they cracked Seattle's head them 2 games, I said, "Oh, maybe this is a really really good team." And I messed up. And sure enough, I absolutely did. Then they cracked Las Vegas head. I was like, "Well, I think
Made it.
I think they're special. I think there's a special
Yeah.
group.
Well, it's so hard to beat a team back to back. Like, generally, you're able to make adjustments. Like, you're not able to go back to the exact same well. And so, you really have to have like some depth, some versatility. You have to be good both on offense and on defense to be able to do that, especially right off the bat in the beginning of the season. And so, that was super, super impressive to me. And then, like, I mean, again, I'm gonna go back to some of the same things because I have my bias, but like I felt like for the past couple years, there were some liabilities defensively for the Lynx, and so Bridget specifically had been someone who had stepped up in a big way defensively, and so a lot of the time she was kind of cleaning up other people's messes on the back lines and having at times, I mean, she'd be running around like a chicken with her head cut off. Like there was possessions where she literally would just follow the ball like person to person to person. She'd be guarding four people, and I was like, oh my gosh, like how do you do that consistently? And I think our offense suffered for it. And so all of a sudden this year you had the consistent buy-in. I mean, Caleb McBride's defense was light years ahead of anything we've seen from her over the course of the entire season. We saw it a little bit last year as she got back into form. And then really continued this year. And then obviously the rest of them, like, yeah, buy-in. And even like Courtney Williams, you know, she has some lapses, but like there's also times where she's just gonna be, as she would say, a dog. Like, you know, she's someone who is not afraid to get in there and scrap. And so it was just really cool to see that level of like top to bottom, your reserves are coming in and they're busting it, and they understand that that's also going to turn into offensive opportunities for them because they were so good at transition offense. And so it was just a really cool style to be able to adopt.
I think um, watching watching the Lynx play defense was one of my favorite things to do this season. Like you said, like they had the ability to, you know, for the most part, they could switch 1 through 5. Like I know that, you know, like you said, Courtney Williams was making making it a point to say, I'm not going to be the one that get picked on,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm sure that she knew that that was going to be, the mindset of the opposing offense. They say, well, we have to, what pressure point do we want to hit? And she was like, well, it's not going to be me. So, and then when you do that and you got, like you said, Kayla McBride playing the way that she played, and Alana Smith on the back line protecting the rim, doing an excellent job, and Nafisa Collier being able to roam and guard every position by herself, basically. It was probably my favorite thing to watch. And I mean, it shows they ended up having the number 2 defense in the league this year, and you could tell just by watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, especially like the little things like you say, where you are able to switch 1 through 5 and like not just make it work, but like thrive. Like I think back to in the playoffs where you'd have Natisha Heidemann out there getting switched onto like Jonquel Jones and tipping the ball away, like just making those plays that frankly you have no business making. Like no one's sitting there and saying, "Yeah, you are going to D her up and stop her when you get switched on." It's just, "Oh, well, do your best, try to stop it, try to make it as difficult as possible." But they take it to another level because that's what they expect of themselves. That's what Cheryl Reeve expects from them. And so when you have those expectations of yourself, when the people around you expect it, it's a lot easier to rise to the occasion. And I think that that's just the culture that they were able to build there, which was really evident from watching them on the floor, off the floor, you know, all the content they put out. It very much is like you all have to trust each other a lot to do things like that. And they did.
I think one of the other things that we talked about this before, but their 3-point shooting was absolutely insane all year. They had 3 people shoot over 40%. Bridget Carlton took 5 a game. Ken McBride took almost 7. Alana Smith took 3. So like it's not even like they it's not like they were shooting a high clip, but they weren't shooting a lot. But like this was a shooting team. Um And the fact that they just converted so much so often, like they ran these plays and got open looks. And like even when they weren't open, like Kayla McBride was like, I don't give a damn. Yeah, well, I'm open or not, it's going in
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like, is the ball in my hand? Maybe.
so like it's just that offense just got taken to another level in so many ways. So and it was just defensively, offensively, everything was just by committee, and it just worked so well. So
Yeah. It's crazy too because like not only do you have the best 3-point percentage in the league, but you have the best 3-point defense in the league. And then you also have the best mid-range percentage in the league. And that's mostly on the back of the queen of the mid-range, which is Courtney Williams, like put together just absurd. Like what she did was crazy. Like to have 40% of your points come from the mid-range, that I mean that's unimaginable, and to shoot the kind of percentage she did. So when you don't have a real dominant back to the basket big, like Lena would prefer to spread things out. Like she's much more an in the flow of offense, like let me get going to the rim, not so much I'm gonna stand behind or stand in front of you and back you down. And so when you don't have that, and that's something that a lot of teams are able to kind of rely on as a bailout, so to speak, you have to get a little bit creative. And then when you shoot the way that they did, it's not getting that creative anymore. It's just saying, okay, this is our offense. This is who we are. And you get really great movement. You get really great looks just because, again, you have that patience, you have that teamwork where I'm gonna pass up an okay shot, maybe a good shot for a great shot because I know the next time down my teammate's gonna do the same for me. And so no one's stat chasing, no one's doing any of that, no one's like counting their own points. It's just that, well, no, this is the right one to make, this is the right call to make, and then on the next time down, my teammates have my back. So it was crazy, but like the 3-point shot wild. And then the mid range, I was like, oh, okay, so you're gonna do that if they're running you off the 3-point line. Then how do they guard you?
I think my favorite thing about the Lynx is that like yes, their like shooting was great and their ball movement was great and all of that, but I feel like so much of like Bridget Carlton being big or Xandra Lassini being big or Kayla McBride being big is like it always just felt timely, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
never like, oh, we're setting up this play to go to Bridget Carlton, but we swung Bridget Carlton in the ball and she knocked it down.
Yes.
And I feel like that was a thing that like I think kind of threw teams off balance because it's like, okay, you know it's going to Bridget Carlton, but like, do you know it's going to Bridget Carlton? Because you got Nafisa Collier right here,
Right.
like Michaela McBride, and to just a little side rant, like when the Lynx signed Kayla McBride, she got a contract extension like 2 years ago. I was like, what the hell are y'all doing? Like Kayla McBride is not playing like sister is getting a little old and she is not playing that well to receive this money that y'all are giving her. But I will say, like this season in particular, that I was like, all right, she was worth her money. Like y'all got your money's worth because like she really, um, she really played really well. And like you said, like playing defensively, I feel like she took it more seriously, and um, it just worked for them. And two, just like seeing her take over some games, like that game one of the finals, I'm like, this is a Natisha Heideman and Kayla McBride like breakout game. Like, why are
Yeah.
y'all two, the two people that are like carrying this team, when
Yeah.
you have a Fee, you have a Bridget, you have a Courtney Williams, like
Yeah.
the people you think that should be playing really well sometimes aren't. And they kind of had people just being able to step up in different games. So I thought that was like super impressive for Minnesota. And two, just some of the like at least during the season, some of the like substitutions that um what's her name? Cheryl made. I think during the playoffs, I would have liked her seen Dorka a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, seen Maisha a little bit more, but even maybe seen Olivia a little bit because I feel like she could have been a really good defensive presence for them.
Mhm.
Especially as just like something to like throw out there. Um, but oh yeah, overall I think like they had a really good season and I think I had them like ranked 6 in our preseason because I'm like, they're a good group of people, right? Like,
Yeah.
they
And
can
that's
win
so
some
much higher
games.
than most people did.
They can win some games, but like, I'm like, I don't see them making a run,
Yeah.
like maybe you
Like
get
they
to
got some
playoffs.
hoopers. They got some people that'll pull them
Yeah. Like,
out.
I really
Yes.
love Courtney in Atlanta. They have big seasons and like,
Hmm.
it really MIP games, but I mean, yeah, MIP plays in the last couple years. So it's like, okay, we can see the progress happening, but yeah, to like pull out what they actually did, I think was super fun. And like, I know the reoccurring thing for Fee was like, we'll never get this exact team back. Um,
Hmm.
and obviously they can't, but I'm like kind of really hoping that they like somehow do. Because I think like, I think they could really like after seeing the run, I think it's like they're more capable of it. And I still don't think like a lot of teams will be prepared for it. Like,
Hmm.
despite seeing it, I don't think a lot of teams will be like, yeah, we're going to set up our roster to beat Atlanta Smith. Like, it's like
Yeah.
that's not what you're gonna do. So, especially when you still have, the Liberty with, Jonquel and Stewie and like maybe JJ gonna play serious basketball. Like we gotta focus on that. The Aces decide they want to be healthy all season. You gotta focus on that. So like, I would really love to like see them try this like experiment again and just kind of see like how it plays out.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people like think it's kind of passive aggressive the way that Cheryl talks about like the construction of their team. And I mean, to me, it's more just like that it's hard when you have a group that you feel like deserves recognition that doesn't get it, and it's because of like the narratives that are really consistently pushed, especially by more traditional media. And so, I totally get it. But also at a certain point you're kind of like trying to push your team, you're trying to push your players, and so the way that they did have such balance and they did have so many weapons and they had games where basically everyone was so crucial, had like a crazy play or had like an insane game for themselves. I remember, shoot, I don't even remember who it what game it was, but like early in the season I pulled up for the first game I went to at Target Center, and we're sitting there and I get my tickets for Bridget, and so I'm in the family section, and that game we were right in front of Natisha's parents, and so we were chatting with them. They were super super sweet, and they're like they come out and they're like, "Oh, Tisha's warming up," and we're like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, she twisted her ankle real bad yesterday in practice." We were like, "Oh, dang." They're like, "Yeah, she wasn't sure if she was gonna play today." She went out and like she was the star of the game. I mean, she had the best game she had had so far for the Lynx. And so you're just sitting there like, "Oh, okay." So you're like ready to go. But I mean, everyone had those games, and especially just the way that the league is, there's a lot of players that are capable of doing that at some point in time. But usually you're going to have a star that you fall back on, and that is Fee. But she's so versatile that you can't game plan for her in one specific way. You can't say, okay, post, this is your thing, or okay, guard, this is your thing. And so it makes it a lot harder to plan for her. And then everyone around her is just so ready to step up. I mean, Cheryl's an incredible coach, so she's going to recognize the very little things that give people an advantage and scheme to exploit that. And that's a lot of why you have these matchups that on paper go the opposition's way, but somehow the Lynx seem to consistently find ways to, at the very least, make it a game. And I think a lot of that does come down to having a lot of options, having really, really elite coaching.
So, uh, next we have Jamae brought it up, or slightly. kind of what Fee talked about, where she said it's going to be impossible for us to bring back the same team again. Um, and this is even more so true because the expansion draft. Even if it wasn't the expansion draft, there's just not very, very rarely, if ever, opportunities to bring back all 12 players in a roster, even though the
Mhm.
roster should be 15. But well, we can talk about that another day. Dear Lord.
Yeah.
Um, so what six players would you protect on the Lynx in an expansion draft? And who do you think the Valkyrie would pick up out of the players you did not select?
Yeah. It's it's tough. I've thought about it a lot because, we've talked about it a little bit over at the press break. And then just for me trying to like figure out exactly how all of this stuff works. I've kind of gotten into it. But um for me, it's very easy because you can protect your five starters and they're all signed for 2025. And so I think that you do that. So that would be Nafisa Collier, Kayla McBride, Courtney Williams, Alana Smith, Bridget Carlton. And so then you have your three players that are still on rookie scale contracts that you have to pick one of. And that's Diamond Miller, Alyssa Peely, and Dorky Juhas. And of those three, to me, at this point, I think that it's Dorky Juhas. It's tough to get size. You probably would still like another big just because both she and Alana can play at like the four. And so that brings you a little bit more depth, a little more versatility. Alyssa Peely, I think she's a solid player. But as has widely been discussed, she's smaller than she was listed at all through college. She's not 6 foot. And so that's very tough in the pros. Um, I think she can develop. I think she can be successful as like a 3 or 4, but I think it's going to take some time. And the Lynx are built to be successful right now. And so I don't think that that's a project you're taking on right now. Diamond Miller has been tough because obviously she's had significant injury issues. And I also think that she is one that it might be best for everyone for her to be in a different system because I think that Cheryl's a great coach. I think that she can develop there, but they are a specific system. They are drawing up plays. They are doing really specific things that impacts everyone because when you're doing a lot of switches, when you're running a very fluid offense and defense, you can't really go off script. And Diamond is a player that I think thrives with some freedom. And I think that she would be an incredible pickup in the expansion draft. She is someone who has a lot of talent, a lot of potential, especially when healthy, and is early in her career. And so you kind of can work on her and know that she will be able to contribute immediately, but also has an even higher ceiling than she's demonstrated so far. And so that's who I would put out there as potentially the person to be picked. It's weird because there are only so many people that are under contract for the Lynx, which is kind of the case around the league because of also CBA stuff. But of the three people that I think are potentials for not being protected, I would go for Dorka. I would keep Dorka, and then I think that Diamond would be a really great pickup, and someone that would be a good building block potentially for a roster. And then after this coming year, then it's all up in the air because no one signs any contract beyond this year due to the CBA being renegotiated. And then you have even more expansion drafts. And then it's like just absolute, complete, utter chaos.
Listen, I would not want to be a GM next year because having to deal with two expansion teams and basically no player wants to sign past 2025 or 2026 because of the CBA, it's like this is gonna get nasty, and I
Yeah.
don't want to
Well,
touch it.
that's why we saw so many coaching changes because you have to be prepared. Like, you simply can't afford to be sitting there thinking, maybe we should make a change. Like, if you're not sure, you're making the move right now. And I don't agree with all the moves made, but that's why. And that's another way that the Lynx do have such an advantage where you have an incredibly tenured coach who knows what's going on, who has a vision, who people want to play for. And so even though they're not signing contracts right now, most of them would like to. Most of them will plan on it, I think. Would like to come back, but they have to see what that might look like. And so going forward, that's potentially a huge boost for them, but you just never know because things are going to be really weird.
I think one, I would definitely want to be a GM right now because they're just doing anything out there. Like,
True.
you know, at this point, like you can literally do anything. And you're gonna have a job for at least
Good at
2 years.
your job, maybe like it's tough, but do you have to be? Like
Because yeah, I feel like the thing that works out for a lot of GMs is like, you know, you take a gamble on somebody and then they like have their breakout season with you. And now people are giving you credit for that. When it's like you probably didn't really
yes,
had nothing to do with it, but you're gonna take credit because I signed her. Yep, it was my
right.
decision. So yeah, I'd love to be a GM because they're honestly just doing anything. Like you said, I don't know if I agree with like all of the changes that they made, but like definitely like if you're not sure and you want a new vision, this is the time. But to your other point about Diamond, I just want to say that that is like a very beautiful PR broadcasting answer because I would have said her IQ is bad. Okay. And I like Diamond, so it's not like I'm trying to like tear her down or anything. I think she's a great player, but to your point, she does like she is very chaotic. Like she's very like
Hmm.
I just want to kind of do what I want to do. And just like you said, with the way that the Lynx play right now, that she's not gonna thrive in that. I do think that she'll be the pick. If she's not protected, she'll definitely be the pick for the Valkyries because I do think like she is a player that you can build around to be like a superstar. At worst, she can be like a Aerial Powers, who is like sometimes you don't know what she's about to do, but it can really work in your favor if you harness it at the right time. You know,
It's like
sometimes
worth
she
the
do,
gamble.
yeah, you're like sometimes she do too much. You might gotta sit her down, but it could work. It could work in the right circumstance. And so I do think like giving some time for her to like really have a little bit more freedom to just do what she wants and like learning how to play well with other people because I do think some of it will be cleaned up as playing with professionals.
Hmm.
Because I think last season, like she looked good playing with them when they, you know, Fee wasn't when she kind of got to be the focal point, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that that would be really exciting. I do think it'll be helpful for her too because you can make better passes if you know that the person to your left is a shooter, right?
Hmm.
And they're not going to throw the ball away. So, yeah, I think I agree with that.
I can also imagine like her being able to play and not having to feel like if I mess up, I'm gonna get yanked is probably gonna
Hmm.
be a lot easier on her. Because like I said, I mean, I think she's just one of those players who needs to fail a little bit, like kind of over and over, and then like develop from there because she has the tools to be really good, but it's just with the Lynx. Cheryl's not having that right now.
Hmm.
It's like I was one call away from a chip. I can't have you up there doing what you want. Actually, you're gonna be here with me. We'll figure that out another day. So, um, when with expansion teams, like it's very rare anyone expects expansion teams to be good, if at all. Like I feel like in the W because it's not a lot of teams. it's very few times you can look at a team and guarantee they'll be bad. Uh, at least 10 out of 12 of them are going to be competitive at the very least. You might be able to look at some of them and be like, yeah, you're not going to be a top team, but you can look at some of them, a lot of them bottom teams and be like, you'll be competitive on a nightly basis. Like even with the
Mhm.
Mystics starting off 0 whatever, like they were competitive every game. Um, so the expansion team will have the benefit of being like, okay, I don't expect you to be good right now. And no one's gonna get fired if the team's not good. Your GM's still gonna be here after this year. The coach's still gonna be here after this year. This is the land of misfit toys right now. So if Diamond goes there and she doesn't play well and like she goes through her rough patch, it is what it is. If she goes there and she starts to thrive, it is like it's wow, like it's really good. I think the Valkyrie are gonna just sign some vets and then sign a bunch of hit or miss players and then go from there. So yeah, I think that is a perfect six to protect. Do either one of y'all happen to have the six we protected during the season? We did a we
Yes, we did. This was like week 4. Yeah, like week 4 of the W
Mm,
season. We did Fee, Diamond, Alana Smith, Courtney Williams, Dorka, and Alyssa.
okay, but
Which
that
like
was
we was kind of committed to the youth movement for a while. Then
Yeah.
Dorka got hurt, and then
Well,
Bridget
when
started
you
playing
don't
really well.
know what to
Yeah,
think, like, and that was that, yeah, because that was before like Bridget had started consistently. That was like
yeah,
because she did not start out like come out of the gate firing,
yeah.
and had not for several years. So like, especially when you think, okay, like maybe you're gonna show some flashes this year, but Diamond and Alyssa are both players that have some level of versatility to them, and so, they're ones that, especially if they had played some throughout the course of the year, would certainly be worth holding on to. In addition, because you have the rookie CL contracts, and so you can keep them around when you don't have that option for any of the vets. So that's like an interesting sort of wrinkle to it that I don't see people talking about a whole lot, where I don't think that'll impact the Lynx because of the way they finish the year. But there's something to be said for the fact that, for instance, if you protect Alyssa, you can keep her through 2027 if you so choose. And none of the starters, you have that option.
it's funny because I think when we protected Alyssa, I think she had just gave
Yeah, she had that
the
like 22 games.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. But
she
that's the thing, like,
just
she shows
gave
she
the
can do
Mercury
it.
20 points. Like I think she hit five,
Yes.
I think she hit five threes on them. I was like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the Alaskan I know.
I love the way she's been like embraced up in Minnesota too, like with it's just so much of like the native population up there and stuff. Like I think that that's super dope. So like I very much would love to see her able to come back and like continue to foster that. Like wherever she goes, I think she'll foster that, but she just seems like such a great like human being. The organization as a whole is just like full of great human beings. So I you can't really go wrong. I like them all, but yeah, that's it's a tough one. It'd be really hard to like be sitting there and knowing like, yeah, we're gonna have someone that we might like to keep like snatched.
And this is another reason why I couldn't be a GM right now. Like I know even if I know they're saying they're not making the votes public, but one, I know the votes are going to come out to the public. Like, there's no way somebody's going to be messy and reveal them. Like, it just always happens. Two,
No.
even if we don't know, the players are going to know. So I know when I don't protect a player who expect to be protected and they don't get picked up and they come back to training camp the next year, I gotta just be like,
It's like that rumor that the Fever deleted that tweet with like the little graphic of like their
They
players
did. They
sitting
are
there.
so messy.
it's like, sorry,
That's
sister. I just
so funny. That slayed me. I'm like sitting there and I'm like seeing people talk about it. I'm like, what they do? I'm like, no way. There ain't no way. that y'all put that out there without thinking about it, without thinking about the optics right now. Oh
It's crazy because
my.
that was a really nice graphic too. Like
Yeah,
that
so
looked
it
good.
was
Yeah, it was
actually
That
really
cute. It
that
cute,
was
graphic
well
was.
cute.
done. Like,
It's
Who,
like just hold on to it, y'all. Like just hold on
that
to it for a month, yo. Like, uh,
I know they commissioned that for, whoever they asked to commission that was probably sick. It was like, dang.
oh yeah. They're like all that time. No, I want them to just like slick repost it right after the draft.
Yeah,
Like,
I might as well.
yeah,
yeah, so we already saw it.
feed the masses. Like they already are gossiping about everything under the sun, especially in relation to that team. So, what's a little bit more fuel?
What free agents would you be interested in Minnesota grabbing?
Man, that's so tough. Like, I mean, I think a lot of it depends on some of the other moves, like whether Chechi wants to come back over again. I feel like there's other players that could absolutely be great in that same role. But I do think that they would like to have as much consistency as they can. And so that's interesting for sure. I wouldn't I wouldn't be upset at all to see Natisha Heidemann back there. I don't think she does, and that's not any insider information. That's just knowing the caliber of player she is and knowing that she could probably go and start a lot of places. And I wouldn't blame her for doing that at all. If she would be okay with continuing to come off the bench, I would be thrilled to have her back there. But I don't think that that's probably super realistic. Beyond that, I mean, geez, it's tough because you get into cap space and things like that. I mean, if we're dreaming big, Cheyenne Parker, if you wanted to make a move, come on down. Um, I think that she showed some really, really great play. I would love to have like a big body five in Minnesota. Um, I definitely would be intrigued by that. Um, someone like a Tina Charles, I just don't think that she's the one. I don't know that she like exactly fits the system, fits what they're looking to do there. I don't know that she has quite as much of the not like versatility because that's also an issue with Cheyenne Parker, but I don't know that I see that there. But
She's
really, I
yeah,
mean,
and she's a grown Diamond Miller. I mean, her IQ is good, but
yes,
she will hijack your offense. So
yeah, no,
she will
that's
cannot fit.
yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it. Like she's just someone that you watch and you say you're just not the right fit. Like you shouldn't be interested. There should not be like the mutual interest. Like realistically, let's look at like who actually fits. And so beyond that, I don't know. I mean, there's so many like good potential players out there because gosh, there's so many people that are not under contract. I mean, like I'm looking, the Phoenix has 4 people under contract for next year. Like, what the hell? That's crazy. So, I mean, there's a lot of options, and then it also depends on like who they decide, what they decide they want to go after in the draft. I gotta say, I saw a mock draft that had them pick Ayoka Lee at 11. Let me say this. I cover the Big 12 a lot. I love Ayoka Lee. I had she like by all indications is such an incredible human being. I like her game. I like the way she plays. She is not being picked 11 by the Minnesota Lynx. Okay? Her knees will not allow that. Like, it makes me sick. I would give her one of mine if I could. She would need to find someone else for the other one, but I would give her one of mine if I could. But I cannot. And so she is not going to have extended play in the WNBA. But if they want to go after a post, awesome. My little like side crusade is to get Stephanie Suarez out of Dallas and somewhere she can play the 4 and the 5. And if you put her in
Like
Minnesota
that.
for Cheryl, she's cheap. She's only gonna be year 2. That I don't know. I gotta look. I know some people that know some people, and by people I mean I know some people that know Kurt Miller. I might need to get in touch. Tell him, Kurt. I don't know. I don't know if they'll entertain it, but I need you to pick up the phone. And see about it up there because that's like my not free agent but personal crusade. But a big post player would be great. Beyond that, you can kind of plug whoever in.
I think Cheyenne Parker is an interesting suggestion. I definitely think Monique Billings might be a good one too. She's been much more active, at least in this last year.
Yeah.
Stephanie Soares is interesting. She's interesting because she's super mobile, and you can tell that like she was starting to like get comfortable in Dallas before like the minutes started to go down because people were coming in and out.
She had to play the 3 and the 4 exclusively.
Yeah.
This is 6. She's listed at 6'6". I maintain she's 6'7".
Yeah. So but I think to that point though, I think like she was playing pretty well at the 4. I was kind of a little shocked. Her and Maddie playing together, I was like, wow, like y'all feel interchangeable.
No, she's a crazy athlete. It's disgusting. She used to be able to dunk.
Interesting. But yeah, I think that would be interesting. And honestly, like she could be an easy get because I don't think she gets saved. And I don't know if like she has enough film for people to be like, yeah, we'll take her.
Right.
Obviously she's big, so you can't teach height, but also like,
there's gonna be other maybe more proven height available out there. So
yeah. So I don't think
yeah, that's an interesting pick because I like just looking at the prospect of what she could potentially bring. I like that.
Yes. Yeah, it's obviously an extremely biased take, but it's also like rooted in reality and logic.
Listen,
beyond just like bring my girls home.
Right. Plus you think about the scheme that Cheryl Reeve had the Lynx run, and there's so much, it's so reliant on being able to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
To say, if you're a big and you get switched out onto a guard, are you going to be able to say, okay, I can do this, even if eventually I'm going to get switched off and I'll be, back somewhere where I can operate more within my comfort zone for this. Like if I got to step out and contest this jump shot, I'm okay with doing it.
I feel like championship teams are not made without hitting on flyers, and I think that's just like you said, it might be a little crazy, but it's rooted in reality, and like those are the type of picks that championship teams hit on. Like if the Liberty did not have Niara, they were cooked.
Right.
If the Aces last year didn't have Kayla George, they were cooked. So like you have to every now and then you gotta take chances and you just gotta hope them chances pan out. Like even a lot of great teams, they may, of course, when you're a good team, you have high draft picks a lot of the time, but you have to eventually hit on a couple draft picks or you're going to be looking crazy at a certain point because you can't keep signing free agents. Like you don't have infinite cap space. So some of these free agents have to work. So like some of these, you got to take chances that you just got to hope they pan out. So
Yeah,
I
'cause
like
there's
it.
there's only so many trades that are made. Like since she's still on her rookie scale, she's not a free agent. But like, yeah, I mean, I think shoot, you throw like a second round pick, like I would be hard pressed to think that Kurt wouldn't be open to the thought of being able to pick someone himself as opposed to working with the roster they have left, especially with, bro, like the strategy of just take the tallest person available needs to go. Dallas, please, I beg of you to get a guard.
Dallas really Dallas really has bothered me in the last couple of years because they were so front court loaded, and it's like
You're so unserious.
it was so many fours and fives, and it's like you have a good rotation. Go send these other ones somewhere else. Like, please. You can't play all of them. You don't play all of them.
And
It's
then
just
sometimes they do, and you're like, what is happening? It's like, why am I watching Kalani Brown and Stephanie Suarez and Monique Billings and you got, let's say they put Natasha Howard and then also freaking Tierra McCowan on there. Like, I swear to God, that lineup might have been on the court together, and I could not handle it.
I'm sure they played some combination of like JC Enrique and three centers. Like it's just
It was their only option for a hot second.
it's like let's get some threes, let's get some twos. Well
Yes,
y'all
they exist.
so I hope that that's one thing Kurt Miller fixes, which I'm sure he will, because I think he's a lot better of a GM than a coach. And I don't think he's a bad coach by any means, but like I just think he specialized in
I think
putting a
he's a
team
great like
together.
evaluator, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I think he'll kind of get rid of that roster crunch on that side. Uh, and then lastly, um, let me see what draft pick Minnesota has. I think they're
11 in the
11.
first
Yep.
round, yep.
What player would you be interested in Minnesota taking if you that you could also see falling to 11, of course?
Yeah. Um, it's tough. Like, I overanalyze the shit out of this stuff, so like it's hard to like
And you be seeing
really
players
think of.
firsthand. So I know it's like
Yeah,
even harder because
yeah.
it's like,
I see him firsthand. I watch at any given time, I like to have 3 games going on my computer in front of me. Like I have a big center monitor that I do split screen, and then I have a second monitor that I'll have a game, and then sometimes I'll pull up my tablet too because I'm like a sick person. But um I I think I would like either. I'm gonna be really controversial and say I would like either a true point guard or a post. Do you think anyone else has thought that before? But no, like I definitely think that those are the two positions that are at a premium. I also think that they're ones that there are a number of them coming out of college that are solid. And so I think that any of the group coming out of South Carolina could be a good option just depending on how they develop over the course of the season. A Raven Johnson or a Tahina Pau, people who could go in there and who could, handle the ball well. And, they're ones that obviously could go high because they have played in a proven system, but also because of the way that they rotate a lot. And so you aren't getting the same minutes as other people. You sometimes don't have the numbers. And that could sometimes lead people who aren't as good of talent evaluators to underrate them. So those are ones that could drop a little bit. I mean, you've got Serena Sundell coming out. She is an incredible player. She has the height that makes her really, really tough to guard as a point guard, but has great passing ability. And so again, you talk about that versatility that Cheryl really prizes. That's someone who I think could make a jump. Now K-State had a tough one today. But yeah, I'm gonna say that she ain't gonna pick Ayoka, but sure, you could talk about her teammate. But
I think
there's
Serena is a really good one, and I feel like she's kind of clutch time too. But I feel like
yes.
player that like I never see her in like a top 12 draft pick. And I just
Never.
like, obviously, Big 12, I mean, K-State, do people watch K-State? Who knows, right? But I
I
just feel
know
like
they
she's like
don't.
such an obvious, like a very obvious choice to me. Like you watch her play like once, she can play with a big, right? She has it like on the
Mhm.
Oka League when she was out, she carried the team with Gabby Gregory. Like I don't know, it feels obvious,
You
but
get
like
it.
whenever
Yes.
pops, it's like she's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, she's one that like absolutely could be a very realistic pick, and there will be people like, who, like what?
Yeah.
And then but the people who know. Like I talked about this on another podcast when I was doing a Big 12 preview, and he just asked me, he's like, what is everyone missing on Sarita Sundell? Because he's like, to me, it's crazy that she's not talked about more. Like, is there a reason for it? Like, what do you see? I'm like, frankly, people are lazy. And so it's that she isn't part of like the narrative. She isn't part of the group that's being talked about. And so it's really hard to break into the group that is talked about. But she's like really the driver behind K-State's success. She absolutely has like the makings of a potential pro player. And again, for Minnesota, you are able to protect your very, very successful, very proven core of not just 5, but 6 players. You're able to bring your entire starting lineup back. And so you don't need a quick fix. It can be someone who you're thinking is maybe we can get 8 to 10 good minutes out of her. And that is like a great prospect for you. You're not looking for a boom or bust star. You're looking for someone who's a little more proven and can do things within your system. And for a point guard, that's a pretty intriguing prospect for sure.
Yeah, I think when you have later draft picks, it isn't about like what can this person be? It's what is this player now? And how can they help me now? Like, of course, you want them to be able to contribute later on down the line for a long time, but
Mm-hmm.
also it's like if I'm this close to a championship and I just need one more piece to hit on something, I do not have time for you to be good in year 3
Yeah.
because you have the physical tools to be very good in year 3. I need you to be good at basketball at this very moment.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like I'm not looking for you to have the potential to be an all-star. I'm looking for you to be a pretty sure thing to be able to be a role player. And then if you're more than that, awesome.
like I think with like with the Aces, like I think for the most part in the last like ever since they drafted Jackie, I after that I don't think they've hit on a draft pick in quite some time. Except I think they did a really good job with Kate this year. And I
Hmm.
think they knew that as soon as she started playing. Like
Yeah.
she basically took over all the other draft picks that they made spot uh ASAP. And I think Kate came in as a specialist. She knew her role. She knew what she was supposed to do. She has already played with a generational type player. And it's like, okay, well, I get this ball. If I shoot this, if I'm open or I make a play, and if I'm not, I give this to her. And
Yeah. It's
I'm gonna
a
do what I gotta
surprisingly
do.
simple role. Yeah, that you can step into there when you have done literally the closest thing to be on the Aces in college is to play alongside someone like Caitlin. And so, I mean, to do that and to be mature about it, to be consistent in it, uh, not to like get on a total different like rant, but the supporting cast at Iowa was like so disgustingly underrated in the time that Caitlin was there. She's obviously a tremendous player, but they don't have that success. They were at their peak when Kate was producing consistently, when Gabby Marshall was producing consistently, when they had Monica Sonata, when Hannah Stolke had good games. And so it was one of those like, oh, what a cute story. Kate gets drafted while she's there to support Caitlin. But then it's like, no, like she can play, like that is a perfect spot for her there. And it's just one of those things where like you just see those kind of random ones that are going to be successful. And so that's where like I sit there and I think through a million different people that could go with these draft picks, but like there's a lot of very like exciting, intriguing ones. And I think we're going to see a big youth movement in the W because there's going to be some ones that don't want to deal with what's coming and with the shuffles and stuff like that. And the new players coming up are so freaking good. It's going to be really interesting.
I need my 15 roster spots. I mean, we're getting all these teams. I
I've
need
been
my
saying
roster
like
spots.
I said last year, I'm like even allow them to have like 3 developmental spots where even if they aren't able to suit up for games, they can be almost like scout team players. They can practice with you and then they can be elevated if you need to sign a short-term contract, like a hardship contract, so that you're not having to rotate people in with like a literal day of being signed. Like put them on even smaller contracts, but have them housed there, have them practice. Like it would help so much with the issue of rookies falling off of rosters so consistently as the league stays old. Like at the very least, if that were like the stopgap to help expand rosters, where in the meantime, okay, you're not having 15 full roster spots, like that's what I've been on for a second. But I mean, just expand them, but at the very least, do something.
I do think that's something they're
Oh, go
really
ahead.
gonna have to consider, like in the future, because it's like it's kind of getting ridiculous. At least the number of injuries that
Yeah,
like
you don't
people
have
are
a full farm
experiencing.
system. You got to do something.
Yeah, and then even like the rookies that are experiencing, like you had Cameron Brink, Camila Cardoso was out for the first couple of weeks. Cameron Brink tore her ACL. Like we know that this is like Asia was just talking about it on one of the podcasts. Like you don't have a break. You don't have time to like sit down and be like, oh, like my job security, right? So I do think like I hope that there is like maybe a rookie or somebody who is a young player on there like see in within the CBA talks because like
Mm-hmm.
at this rate like you can't keep like living like that and it's
Well,
not gonna work long term.
and also like let's talk about the fact that like you just these are women and so they're more prone to severe knee injuries and the fact that you're starting to play year round at the age of like 10. Okay, so let's look at UConn. Let's look at Notre Dame, where they have situations where they're playing with literally not a 7-person rotation, 7 scholarship players available. And you're sitting here and saying, and that's with the availability of 15 spots, and coaches don't use them all. And so we have these professionals that go from one season to the other with no break, and we're seeing all of these injuries, and you're only allowed 12 roster spots, and you think that that's sufficient. Like, I get there's a lot of changes being made right now, and you can't do everything all at once, but like, as a health issue, that has to be a priority because this is people's livelihoods. This is also people's lives where people are retiring in college because they want to be able to walk around and play with their children because their knees are busted because they're not being taken care of right. Like, I don't know. I get heated about it. I think it's messed up. I think there's a lot that needs to be done better. And it's just it's another one of those things that you try and treat it the same way you treat men, and it's like no, there's also like physical differences where you already are at a disadvantage with your knees and stuff. So like you have to acknowledge that and you have to try and do something to mitigate the danger of it.
I think also like I've been on the 15 roster spot thing ever since I think someone did the math and was like when there especially before there was an expansion team even talked about it's like yeah if we just add 3 teams 3 roster spots to every team that's more spots added to the W than
Right.
3 expansion teams or 2 expansion teams. It's like it's just the math. But every time somebody asks Kathy about it, she's like, I don't think we need to do that. It's like why? I have not. It's not even like she'll be like, yeah, I don't want to do this right now because such and such stuff. She'd just be like, I don't want to do that right now. It's like What's
Like,
the
give me logic then, but we know there is
Right.
none. It's just like, I don't want to think about another thing.
it's like every team, it's like always like at least like two teams whose like roster just gets depleted to high
Yeah,
hell and has
like
to sign like,
evaporates.
and it's like, wow, three more people on this roster would have did wonders.
Yeah.
would have did wonders. But I think your point that you making about like the youth movement is coming because players or older players probably aren't going to want to deal with all the shuffling around is kind of interesting because that's something I've never really thought about. Um, I mean, I always just I thought about a youth movement on the way because of course we're getting more teams and the players are just really good. But yeah, the fact I could also imagine as an older player, it's like, yeah, I've been doing such and such for this long, and y'all are doing a lot. So actually,
Mhm.
I think I'm good on it. I'm a,
Well, and just think of like how there's more opportunities in media now. There's better coverage. There's going to be more coaching spots available for the people that choose to move into that. And so it's kind of the perfect time to make a natural transition into like the next step of your career as well. And so I can certainly see that being a very easy sell for a lot of people. The asterisk being apparently not Diana Taurasi, but like a lot of people, I think will be ready to hang it up and to let the young ones take the take the adjustment for themselves.
well, Jay, would you like to say the line?
Yes. I believe all hearts and minds are clear.
Well, this has been another episode of Pull Up 3. I'm Paragon Don.
I'm Jamae.
Jay Trent.
Uh,
And I'm Jamie Steyer Johnson. You can find me online everywhere at Jsteyz, JSTEYZ.
And we are out.